I'm gonna talk about here. This is the MLS change form. Have any of you ever used it? No. Okay, now I'm probably jumping the gun here, but this is for if you have a listing. Okay. Comes with directions on the back. Okay. On the second page. Basically, when you go and you fill this out, you put the listing number from the MLS on here. Fill in the address. Our listing office number is 3831. You use that whether you have a buyer or a listing in different areas. Your listing ID number will be your MLS number. And then your name. And then this is a communication tool here that you use to email up to the front desk. If you have a price change, you need to have the seller's signature and your signature. Okay. If it expires and you have a new one, you're signing a new contract or an amendment. Once again, it's the seller and you. If you have a status change to temp, that's just between you and the seller. But if it is a cancellation and you're taking that listing off the market, then you have the seller, your signature, and the broker's signature. Okay, when you have the broker's signature, you know how you load these up into transaction desk and you box off the boxes and you email them out to be signed? You do exactly that to your broker. You have your seller sign first. You sign, once you sign it, it will go over to the broker. You text the broker, hey, I just sent you a cancellation. They'll go into their email, they'll pull it up, and then they will go ahead and sign it for you. Status changes, if you have to go to active, this pending box I want to talk about here. When you have a listing, you have an accepted offer that's passed inspection or doesn't need an inspection, and it's going to go to the closing table. On this area, you're going to put the date that it was pending, the projected close date that you guys agreed upon, the selling, no, get a load of this, selling ID office, selling agent ID, and selling agent ID. That is the person who brought the buyer to the table, the buyer's agent. That's not you. Okay. And that's what we put in. That's how the buyer's name shows up whenever you look at a pending. You'll see who the pending agent is. That's how we get that into there. And then when you sell the house, and you don't need, when you're in the pending, you don't need to have your seller sign or you sign. You just need to inform us of that change. When it's sold, in the last column here, you put in the sale price, the close date, don't need to do the loan amount, seller's contribution, yes, and then one of the finance terms. So if they're doing like an FHA and they get some help from one of the programs, you don't need to mark both boxes. And then we normally don't do renting. And then you just upload this each time you fill it out. Send it to the front desk and let us know what you want done with it, okay? I wanted to go over to this form because this is your listing number. And then when you're in command, you have an opportunity number. They're two different numbers. Okay, and if you just upload this in the command and think we're going to find it, we won't find it. You have to tell us it's there. All right. So I just wanted to go over that today. If you have any questions ever when you're filling that out, please let me know. So many agents with that selling, they always stick their name in because you're selling the property. It's actually the buyer's agent who is selling the property. All right, so today we're going to start. Where do you guys want to start? Do you want to start with like buyer's reps forms? Does that sound good? Okay, the only reason I'm asking is because I know we just went over this about a month ago and I wasn't here last week and we're going to do some other stuff. So, okay, so always in the tools, in the transaction desk, we are still working on how to use the new format they have. So we're just going to go old school for right now. Okay, get up here. There we go. All right, slow me down if I'm going too fast, okay? So when you want to have a new buyer, you click the little house here on the right, left-hand side. This out of here. All right, there we go. You see this little add button over here? Okay, well, there's two things you have to do. First, let me go this way so it's not so confusing. This is your contact card. In here, in the add button, if you want to go ahead, you can use your name if you want. You can add in buyer, and then the person's first name, last name, and email, and save. That's all you need to have for your client. Because that's all you can do is maybe email the forms out to be signed. Okay, and then we go back to the house. Go to the ad. And we're going to take the classic transactions. And then in here, I would go in and I would type in my buyer. The template I'm going to choose is the buying one in here, but the listing one is in here. And then there's an offer one here for when your buyer needs to write an offer. These have pulled all the forms into these packets for you. And we're going to click on there. We're not going to import any data from North Star right now, but if you're writing an offer on a PA, you could do that, and that would pull that information in from that MLS listing. But it is up to you to make sure that information is correct. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and always use the wizard because that will populate items in here for us. And then we are the buyer's agent, so we're going to leave it as buyer tenant agent. And we're going to hit create. And this is going to pull things together. We don't need a couple of these screens, so we're just going to bypass it to page 3. Now we need to get our buyer's name in here. So I'm going to go in here. And I already know that it's in my contact. If not, you can create it right here. And I'm just going to go in here and find my buyer. And I'm going to add them. And in here, it's just asking for a few things like the email because I didn't have anything in here. A preferred signature to put in here and their initials. And the reason for the preferred one is they might go by John, but their legal name might be Jonathan. Go to sign. Because remember, everything has to match their driver's license. Okay, got that on there. Just hit next. And these are the forms that we're going to be working with. The 2 forms at the bottom, buyer's touring, here in the representative non-exclusive, we're not going to use. But the first 4 we are. So if you don't like those there because it confuses you, just come over here and hit delete. We can always get them back into a packet if you need them. So don't ever feel like you deleted something and then you can't get it back. So when you first go out and you meet with your client, and this one might already be signed because you met them at an open house and they signed at your agency. If that's already signed and you're electronically sending them the rest of the packet, you don't need to resend this. Okay? This one, there's nothing to do, so we're just gonna go, you don't even have to open it, okay? I just opened it for you guys to see, but just file save, go back to the forms. Next one down is the affiliate business arrangement. And in here, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to type in my buyer's name. I'm going to use the calendar over here so I make sure that I get my year correctly. Because if I did put 25 in here and I did have things signed as 25, I would have a valid contract. Down here for the property address, because this is a buyer, we don't have to put an address in here because we don't know what they're going to purchase. If it's a seller, you'll have an address in there. If it helps you when you're doing this, just to do TBD, just because you filled in the spot, do TBD. Otherwise, it is written over here on the side. You come down here, You just retype in their name. Type today. Yeah, and always make sure you spell their name correctly. And then we just go up, because we want to keep this form, we go up when we do a file save. Come back, we're gonna do file open. Then the buyer's disclosure and acceptance is your next form. And on this one here, we have the 450 down here for our BAC. If you like, and you want to make a little extra to cover some of your gas and mileage and stuff, you can increase that. The buyer does not pay this unless you get to the closing table. So if they don't close, you don't get that difference, okay? So if you want to round it up to 500, you can if you want. That's up to you. Down here, you can see it auto-populated because of the wizard. So everything's here. I'm gonna leave this at 450. And then I'm going to go do my save. And I always just hit save just to make sure. And now we're gonna do our contract. Okay, so first one, this little box over here, this one, sometimes we forget about that. Once again, just populate it. Today's the 4th. John is my client. I opted in my Keller Williams here. What date is my contract starting? I'll meet with him tomorrow. And I'm going to work with him. Let's see. Let's go to about September. I like the end of the month, okay? You want to make sure between this date and this date that you have enough time in there at the front of the contract to find the property to write the offer. And then once the offer is written, you want to make sure that it gets accepted. Once it's accepted, it can take up to 40 days to close. So that's why you kind of drag this date out a ways, okay? The contract ends if they buy a property. So if they buy a property and you close within 65 days, the contract's done. If they want to buy another property, you write another contract, okay? This gives you enough days to work within. So a good 6-month period is probably a good way to do it. Because if our market is moving very fast, you create multiples. If there's nothing coming on that they like, it could take you longer to find it. And it's easier to have this date out of ways, no more than a year, so that'd be a year or less, than to ask to have that contract amended and have to change their mind, say, you know what, I don't want to buy it. Right. And we'll go down. 27, we don't do retainer fees. Those are usually paid up front. We don't ask our clients to pay up front unless there's just something that, you know, a reason why they have to pay. Maybe they're in a short sale foreclosure type thing and they're going to pay their money up front, but you don't get paid unless the property closes. It comes here to our office to be held. Broker's commission, you as a buyer's agent, you can collect no more than 3%. Best practice is to put 3% in that box because you don't know what a seller might be willing to pay you. It might be 2.7, it might be 2.5. And there's another form where we can fill out and the buyer would not owe us the difference between a 2.5 to a 3 or 2.7 to a 3. So, but if the seller pays absolutely nothing, your buyer then could pay you 3%, or you could go ahead and lower. If you were to put 2.5 in there and you go to write the offer, and for some reason the listing agent says, well, my seller will pay 3%, you cannot write 3% on that purchase agreement. You cannot collect any more money than what's written on here. Does that make sense? All right. And then normally a lot of times people will put down a number in here. I just say do 0. If you're looking at a property that's like $100,000, 3% of that is $3,000. And if you put in this box here $3,000 and you have 3, or then you don't put anything over here, and they go to buy a property for $125,000, you can only collect 3,000. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay. Do you guys remember talking about your days? Okay, one way.
180.
Huh?
180.
You can only do up to 180. You can put anything between 0 to 180. Do not leave it blank because it will be returned to you by the broker. To put a number in here means that when the contract ends, the buyer has not purchased the home, you have 72 hours to give them a copy of everything you have shown, brought to their attention. Okay? I'm not sure how many people do that. A lot of people put 30 days in, 20, it just all depends. Where, like I said, where our market is. Down here, most of us will be checking residential personal. Some people say check them out. Other people say when you check this, you are saying you are an expert in that area and you can help them find what they want. So if you want to go keep into the residential areas investment, they're going to live there and they're going to also have maybe another side of a duplex to rent out. All right. If you want to go ahead and check them, go ahead. It's been kind of a, I don't know, 50-50 in what people do. Down here, buyer's choice for closing services. Okay, you here are acting as the broker, and you can choose to pick your agent to close, which means title fusion, for instance, here, then, or a buyer can arrange to have an attorney to do it. Almost 100% of the time, you'll be arranging that closing. Okay, you're the one that's gonna send all the paperwork over to the title company. You're the one that's gonna make sure they have all the buyer's information and anything else that they need. If it's something personal from the buyers, the title company will contact them. You'll get them the PAs, all that stuff, okay? And then if you want, you can attend the closing. Some people do, some people don't. To me, that's the funnest part of the job, is sitting there watching them sign, whether it's a listing or a buyer. And so you have them check one of the boxes, and then they will initial the boxes here. Any questions on title? Yeah. And then do you guys understand dual agency? That it's any agent within our office, okay? Doesn't matter if it's another Keller Williams outside of here, it's only the agents in the office. When you go to some of these other ones, and I'm not sure for sure, but I think like Edina Realty might be one of those where all their offices are connected, so they would be in a dual relationship throughout whatever transaction, if Edina and Edina did both sides. Okay, so much of the time they want to buy. So basically they're going to say, yeah, we'll agree to it. Okay. Once again, just have one of the buttons checked. Buyer sign, you sign, and date. Down here in other, this is where we put the class in here. BAC, remember that 450? 450 will be type paid at closing. Something to that effect, okay? You can have successful closing, whatever you want. The reason we do this is that affiliated sheet is not actually part of the contract, where the way the one's written for the sellers. Okay, that means within that 3%, you gotta have enough money to cover you, and you have to your commission, and then that 450. All right. Then down here, it auto-populated, put my client's name in there, put my name in there. It put our address and stuff in here. You don't have to worry about your client's information in there unless it's a way for you to try to get their address. All right. Because you have to have the spelling of their names and everything correctly, and an address, and a bonus to this whole piece, their birthday. is say you have to take a picture of the driver's license. Okay, people spell their name very uniquely from time to time. And you want to make sure that it is spelled correctly because that can cause some problems when you come to the closing table. So take a picture of it and then you'll have their birth date for your records. And then down here, you just have to have them sign when we set it up for the wire transfer. Now, mind you, you guys can sit at home and read all this and understand line for line. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to do save. And all our forms have been filled out. So now we want to sign. So then we go ahead and we check here. All these, all 4 forms, we put them up here in the basket. Okay. If you want to print and have signed in person, you can print right here. If you want them to sign electronically, you hit the pen. And now it's configuring them all. Now I put these in order because agency is the first thing you ever want a client to sign. I put the other 2 forms in the middle because I don't care how they sign, and then the contract at the end. That's just the way I like to do it. If you don't like it, you can move it around. So this little button right here, if you can see it, it's white. Click it over. And now we're gonna make sure that we have our people, which didn't show up, the selling agent. No. All right, so then we're just gonna go over here and we're gonna go add from transaction. That's gonna be me, and that's gonna be John. That's the only 2 people in this transaction. So I am the selling agent and he is the buyer. I do not want to be the first person here to sign. I want my buyer to sign first. So I'm just going to bump him up to be number 1, and then I'll be number 2. If you had another person in here, you just keep put them in order that you want to do the. If you don't like the way the docs are in order, you can come over here and do the same thing by just moving these around. And then we're going to just go to tools and we're just going to click. Okay, I do not sign here, but John does. So I just slide it over, drop it, the month and date come with it. If you don't like it in that spot, just move it over. And if you click it and it doesn't move and it just kind of lands someplace, like anywhere in here, just come up, find the trash can, delete it. Make sure you also look for these. These sometimes will populate if you hit them one too many times. Go right down the form here. Agency is done. And mind you, I've already proofed this one other time, make sure that I had everything in there. And then when I come here, I just grab, okay, he's going to sign here. And it came with the date. Date can stay right there. It doesn't have to be in the date box. This one here, he's going to sign. And I need to sign this one. This is the catch, just make sure that you're always changing it back to the right person if you do it this way. And then I come down here. And it auto-populated here because of the wizard. It auto-populate here because of the wizard. Once again with the wizard. And then down here, the wire fraud. Make sure I change it back to my client. And sign. See, I did it twice again. Finish that, and my date stayed up here. Bring it down here. Alrighty. And if you want, you can always go back up as you're going back up to make sure everything is assigned boxes. Once they are all signed, then that is the thing away again. We hit over to next. Let's see. All right, who's missing? Yeah.
If you go back to the signers, I think there was an exclamation for.
Yeah, you know why? Because I didn't put an email in for him.
There you
All
go.
right. Let's see, we'll send him to the front desk. All right, yeah, so that's the thing, you gotta look around sometimes, figure out what you're missing. And hit the save button, that helps. There we go. You can just automatically send them if you want, but I always do a little custom thing here. Cause I make sure that it's going to them first, and I'll just put on something like, please review. And sign if you have no questions. It kind of gives them that out again if they don't want to participate and either buy or sell with you. And then once I do that, on mine, on my subject line, I'll just put down a lot of times my client's name, just so I can find it easier if I have to dig through my emails. And then in here, I would put like buyer's docs or something like that. So they know when it's coming. Once I've sent it, I'll send them a text letting them know that I sent it. Now it's being sent. We're gonna pop over here. And these are my buyer's forms right here. This is what they're gonna see. We're gonna start signing. And you guys can do this at home between your personal and your work one, too, if you want to see the flow of everything. Now, before I start doing that, I'm gonna pop back here to this pen real quick. And as you can see, his stuff is right here. And it says 0 out of 2. And I hit start. I already did that. Okay. I accept. And you just click here. If you're on your phone, you got to use your finger to click it to sign. And hopefully they've read all this before they hit all the buttons. And I asked them to read it, review it, and they completed. And they're done. Everybody wants a survey. Let's go back to here. And let's do a quick refresh. And now it says 1 out of 2. So that means he's done. And I've been sitting here waiting for him to be done. Now I have my personal email up. So then it just comes in here and I do the same thing. I just hit the signing button. And then once it comes, I just hit accept and then start. And it's going to take me to where I need to sign. Oops. There's one, so I hit it with my finger. There's the other one. And it tells me I'm completed. Wants a survey. And now we're going to see this come back to 2 out of 2. And you're completed. You have a signed contract. Then you can come back over here. One spot. You can either get the signed forms out of your email because they'll come back to you through your email. Or you can come back into your buyer that you and come down here. Go to documents so that everything comes up. And all your signed documents are right in here. And then you can download each one of these and upload them into your command as being signed. Just verify that everything's signed. All right.
Under opportunities.
In opportunities, yeah.
Yeah.
And so once you get these signed, create your opportunity, take them in your opportunity, submit them to the broker for review. Everything's approved. You don't have to worry about anything while you're working on the contract. Okay. All right. Questions? No? Do you want me to do listing one for you? Okay. I know you guys have been sitting for a while too, so. All right. So basically it's going to be the same type of thing. You're going to come over to the plus. And you're gonna put in your client's name. And our template's gonna be the listing one. Now, if this client had, if the property was listed before they bought it, you could take the last MLS number and you could import that data. But you need to go through and make sure all that data is correct. Okay, make sure that you remeasure the house and all that stuff. But
So would you suggest not importing?
you can import it.
Okay.
It's just up to you. And that the best thing to do is even if you import it, it will go in there. Then you can just go back to the card and find it if you need to or make changes. But I don't. Just because an agent says this room is 10 by 10, if you measure and it's 10 by 9, it should be correct. So always double check stuff like that. It might have been a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but they finished a bedroom. Now it's a 4-bedroom. You know, and if you import it and it says 3-bedroom and it's really a 4-bedroom. So go through there and then I am the seller in this one. And I'm gonna hit the create. And once again, you just hit the next. You don't need all this information unless you want to have double databases. I'm just going to add my buyer. Or seller, I should say. I mean, I'll say buyer, so we're just going to grab one. And then in here, once again, it has the, you know, put in the preferred name and all that stuff in here. And initials. Yeah, then next. And here are all my forms. So to make this go just a little bit faster, your agency's the same. This is the affiliate arrangement, that's the same. The seller owner and acceptance is a little bit different from the buyer's one. And here you're gonna want them to choose if they want open houses or not, what they want to do about multiple offers. Okay. And this is where they're authorizing things. That's why this one is more part of the contract. Talks about the home warranty. Here's the $450 again. Some people will change this $450. They'll up it for $200 to cover pictures. They'll tell the client that, no, I do not charge for pictures because you rounded it into this fee and they don't know what that fee is. And you pay for pictures. And if you don't sell the house, then that's an expense for you that's not reimbursed at closing. Does that make sense? So I think a lot of people will do that. They'll add staging in there. So that's up to you. So, and then I already auto-populated my name in here. And then we're gonna go to file. Do save. And file and open. And then we're gonna do the listing contract here. The input sheet we'll talk about. Estimate of proceeds we'll talk about, and then certification of hold and coming soon we'll also talk about. And then after that, yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so once again, you use the date. That's your contract. And then you pick your address. Okay. And here, I'm not gonna type it all in. And the city of, the county of, the zip code. And if you go out to the tax records, that's where you can get the legally description. Okay. It's not a house or something like that. There's a description of the block and lots and stuff like that. So that's what goes in there. Has the Keller Williams in here. And if we come down, once again, the date that the contract starts on. And you're gonna wanna stretch this out depending what our market is. Cause you gotta get it on the market, available for showing on the 5th, unless I put it in a withheld stage or a coming soon stage. But you need time to find a buyer, to write the offer for the seller to accept, and then to make it to the closing date. Okay. The price, we need to have a price on line 13. And that is a price where you have gone to the seller and you've told them, I've done some CMAs, this is what I think your property might be, listed at. And they may or may not like your price, they might want their price. So whatever price you agree on, you just put that price in here. If you're going into a withheld stage, we can adjust that price before going coming soon or going active without anybody else seeing it. Okay, so this is just to give the seller an idea of what they want to list their property for sale. A lot of times this will be the number you will use. But if you put it in a withheld today and you wait 45 days to go on the market for them to get the house ready, our market might have already changed. That price could go up or down. Okay. Terms down here, this is cash, VA, FHA, conventional, and you can always put all offers will be submitted, something like that. Find your own words for something like that. Basically, this is what the seller is willing to sell their property for. So if you are in a townhome condo and they don't do rentals and they most likely are not going to take FHA. So make sure you can put it on this line, but you don't want it on the image. Okay, this is basically saying that however an offer comes in, the seller will go ahead and take a look at it. So if somebody's going to come in and say, well, I know you want this house down the street that I own and I want your house, that's swap, that's all offers, Okay. And then we're gonna go down here. These ones here, these are gonna show up on your input sheet, listing the display on the internet. Yes, we want to do that. Yes, we want to list the house address on the internet because we want people to be able to find it, because that has to go through the MLS. Property valuation. This is a yes or no. Most people will check yes. Comments or reviews on property. Majority of people probably check no. Because if it's on a third-party site someplace and somebody makes a comment, you can't erase it, you can't change it. That's their opinion. The house might be in the greatest condition. They say, oh, that place is a dump. Okay. And then, when the property, if the property that you're listing is not in a lease, like they're not renting it out, you don't, I'm trying to think how to explain this. So in here, list for lease. Normally you do not want the property list for lease because whoever buys the property has to honor the rest of that lease. Okay. And if it is right now on the market, then you would have to finish do is and then figure out who the listing broker is. And then the seller may or may not. Normally you're going to want to say may not. Okay, because you don't want them to list out the property because when you sell it, like I said, the new buyer has to honor the lease until it's done. That goes through a bunch of the stuff here. Down here, this is where your commission comes in. Okay. Once again, don't, best practice, maybe no retainers. In this dollar amount, the average person has probably been putting in 3.3%. This is the commission that the seller is willing to pay you to sell the property. That has nothing to do with the buyer. Okay. Because the buyer's going to go ahead and take care of that a different way. And then once again, you can put a price in here or you can just put 0. or down, I should say. When you come down here, this area is where we're talking about that negotiation part of the buyer's fee. And I can show you how to red line it out where you just take an X and you X it out. And that looks better when you're sitting there with the seller saying, this is gonna be negotiated on line 406 of the purchase agreement when a buyer's agent presents us a purchase agreement, okay? That's where the buyer agent is directed by the buyer to ask for so much money to be paid towards the buyer's agent, okay? Before, we used to do like a 6%, and we would tell seller, well, I get 3.3 and we're gonna pay a buyer's agent 2.7. Okay? That wasn't being negotiated quite well, okay? Some states wasn't even being negotiated that way, but we would explain it that way. The seller would say, oh, okay, yeah. But then the buyer would ask for closing costs, the buyers would reduce prices of homes and stuff. Now, when they do it, a seller has an opportunity to come back and negotiate all three of these areas to get the better deal for themselves. You know, they might say, you know what? I'll pay your buyer 2.7, but I'm not gonna pay 3% closing. So it adds up when you start doing the numbers. So I will show you how to do that. Otherwise, just click the box, shall not. Because if you were to come in and put a 2.7 in here like this, that means that 2.7 is gonna be taken off of that 3.3 up there. That leaves you a 0.5 for your commission. If somebody was to see your contract, and then if they see it on line of 406 of the PA too, that means that buyer's agent could double dip and get the 2.7 from the buyer or from the listing seller. And then over here, who would pay this? The seller, or would you end up paying it? So you may end up losing your commission. So we just kind of recommend best practices are to just, and like I said, I'll show you how to just draw a red line where we do signatures on here. Okay. And then once again, here's the 0 to 180 days after the contract expires. You have to give them everything within 72 hours of who has seen the property. That means what agents came onto the property with their people, or if you did open houses, a list of all the people that came through the open house. All right. Once again, this one here is, we're down to title company, who you're gonna use, somebody like a Title Fusion. And that, or if the seller wants to go ahead with the seller's attorney. Sometimes when you're in a state, sometimes you do have to use the attorney's office. And yes or no, if the person is a foreign, just check one of the two boxes. And then it comes down to dual agency again, once again, if they want to sell, they don't care if the buyer comes from office or not. Everyone signs on there. And then other, you don't have to do anything, and then it has their name and the wire fraud. And that's all it is to fill out the contract and do save. And that one is done. All right. This is the input form. Have you guys looked at this form at all? Okay. If you have time at home, start filling out one according to your property or a parent's property, or just kind of pick a property that's on the market and kind of fill it out. This needs to be signed in ordinary to go onto the MLS, which means if we do put it in a withheld stage, we do need this at the time of the withheld, okay? Basically, it'll be the contract starts, ends, the owner's signatures, and your signature on here. The remaining area in here, once I get to this page here, from 2 to 12 are gonna be filled out by you. So if you're going on a listing appointment, if you can fill out as much as you can ahead of time, and then figure out what's missing, maybe you need to know how many appliances they have. Or do they have stainless steel or white appliances, that type of thing. But all black filled in boxes must be complete, okay? If I would have had their address in my wizard, it would fill out a lot of this information for me, like in here. For it, so you would just go through this thing here. And you would just come down. You do have to type in the directions, but the legal description should auto-populate for you. And then right in here is where you can go ahead and put the listing price. And here, this is where you can like change it because you're going into withheld. Fill in your expiration dates, my information auto-populated here. So you can fill this out, like I said, before you go see the client. And then just come down here and start with all these black boxes. Just answer the questions. If you can't find it, might be on the tax records. Okay, maybe take a look at a previous listing and see what has it. So might not be perfect, but I'll give you an idea of what's there, and then you just need to make sure it's correct. If you have an association of 420, then the boxes become required. And there's some other boxes down towards the end that talk about townhome. So if you have a townhome, then those become required. If you hit, there's a couple. In here, we'll give you a list of what we call the different rooms. So you can find them in here. And then we'll also give you levels, so you can do that. This is approximate. No matter how much you measure, it's approximate. Everybody's measurements are gonna be different. Your photographer is gonna be off from what you measure. And up here on the bats, I ask if there is no zero, if there is no bathroom, put a 0 in there to acknowledge the box. Because if you're in St. Paul or Minneapolis, a lot of times in the older homes, down around the corner in the basement is a toilet. Or maybe there's a sink. That's considered a quarter bath. So we'll see a lot of those from time to time. And I think that's it. And then when you get down a ways on this one, they become white boxes. These help you sell the property. The more you can fill out, the better you are. Okay. You might not have anything in any of the boxes. All right, so that's just a quick look at that one there, but if you ever have questions, let me know. All right. Estimate of proceeds. I'm gonna just go through this one really quick, and then probably at the end of the month, we'll do it more detail. Okay. When you list a home, the broker kind of likes to see this form here filled out to have 3 different prices. Maybe your lower point, maybe what you're gonna list it at, and maybe if you get multiples. Okay, we'll go through that more of it, and then at the bottom, it will total for you. It will not multiply boxes out for you, but it will be give you a total at the bottom. And if you have to fill it out between now and then, you can get help. Otherwise, there's a whole bunch of detail on how to do it. Yeah, all right. And then certificate for withhold. Okay. If you go out today and you meet with a client and they sign your listing agreement today, but they don't want to go on the market till Monday, fill out the withheld. Very easy, just has the address, the tax information in here. Have them sign it and get it to the front desk within 2 business days. Because when they sign in a listing agreement, that has to be entered into the MLS within 2 business days. Okay. If it is a withheld, it will go into the withheld status. The only person who will see it will be you and basically me. No other agent's going to know this property is available. Okay, and it can stay within the withheld status till the end of the contract if they never get the property ready to go on the market. But they say, give me another week, give me another week. Yeah, I need 2 more months, So this is a great tool to always have with you. Even if they think they're ready, bring it with. Also, when you're on that appointment, snap 1 picture. Because if you go into coming soon or active, you got to have 1 picture within 2 business days, I think it is. So you're gonna wanna, and then when you get your photos, you pull that one out. And then if you decide to go coming soon, it's the same type of form. And the coming soon one here, you just kind of fill out the same way. The only difference is you do need to put availability date in there, okay? That is the date that the system will automatically roll it over to being active on the MLS. And we cannot go to coming soon or active if all the information's not collected off that input sheet. If I'm missing something, we're at a standstill. So even if you go there today, have a withheld sign, let's put it in withheld, then let's make sure that you get everything filled out and we get it entered and the system tells us everything's there before we move forward to an active stage. Okay, takes a little bit of that off your shoulders. And that for scrambling for information, maybe you didn't know how to find, or the seller didn't know it and they're looking for it. Okay. And you can only be in this stage 21 days. And you cannot go back to this stage with this property. If you cancel it and relist it, you can't go back to coming soon. Unless you're out of the market for 90 days, 60 days, or 6 months, something like that. All right, and I think the last form is the funnest form of all. Let's see, you got the seller disclosure. Showing instructions. This is for showing time. Fill this out the best that you can and ask us for help. Basically, you're going to want to put in your information here. And what are you going to do? Are you going to confirm it? Is one of the sellers going to confirm, just FYI, confirming means they're going to approve the showing. And then as you go down on this sheet, you guys have 100% access to showing time to make every change you want in there. This form does not flow with the way showing time does, but if you don't want to allow overlap schedulings, appointment types, normally it is confirmed with any, and what that means is if you have 2 sellers and you only any person, so if it goes to the first person can approve it and then the showing can happen. If it is all, that means each party has to go ahead and approve it. And that can take forever. Lead times, if you have somebody who needs an hour lead time or something before a showing because they have kids at home or pets. Combination, access notes, if there's an alarm, if you want any of those, and that's it. And then we enter that into the MLS for you when it becomes active. Okay, and you also have 100% access to enter this information also. All right, I know it's been probably a long 2 hours. Any questions or thoughts? All right, we're going through this quite often. And if you go out there and you get something, come in. We'll sit with you. We'll help you get through your forms, okay? Yeah, so if it's 2-3 weeks and you don't remember it, come find us. Okay?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
All right, great, thank you.